Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky, Bradley Beal is on his way to Phoenix, and the ripple effects impact the Lakers in a big way. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everyone for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcasts, it's always going to be free. It's never going to be behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show and hang out with over 17,000 subscribers, Andy, all of whom are reacting in a big way to the weekend's blockbuster trade, which hasn't been officially done yet, but that will send Brad Beal from Washington to Phoenix. So much to break down in that, both from an NBA standpoint, but certainly in terms of how it impacts the Lakers. Do want to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users, I should say, can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. So you can see over there tons of stuff that we want to get into in terms of the potential ripple effects from this deal. Bradley Beal, Andy, going to Phoenix, could basically choose his destination. And he chose the one that, like, it's like his dad's, like, father-in-law's, like, agent's son, cousins or something. Like, it's shady.
His agent, longtime agent, Mark Bartelstein, he's been in the game forever. His son is, I believe, the CEO of the Suns, the S-U-N-S, not the S-O-N-S. It's not that on brand and shady. But, I mean, look, here's the thing. The reality is these sorts of relationships influence deals all the time.
Yeah.
It just rarely feels as completely on brand as this. But what makes it, I guess, feel a little bit less shady than some of the other ones is Bradley Beal had a no trade clause. So if he does not want to go to Phoenix, none of this happens. That he wanted to go to Phoenix, I guess, does grease the wheels in ways that, I guess, depending on who you ask, favored each side. But regardless,
we haven't seen anything like this, Andy, since Jalen Brunson went to New York.
Right. Exactly. Like that one even, is Jalen Brunson never supposed to speak to his father, Rick Brunson, who's with the Knicks? I mean, Brian and I have covered this league in some capacity now for going on 20 years. It's like Game of Thrones level incestuous. I mean, if we're really being honest about it, like there's no such thing as like a clean transaction.
If you missed the news, it's Bradley Beal to Phoenix. He, as Andy mentioned, had a no trade clause, which in addition to, he is still owed, I believe, $200 million from Washington. $250 American dollars, it should be noted, just in case anybody thought it feels like it. Just in case anybody thought maybe, somebody could have lucked out with the exchange rate. No, we are dealing with American dollars here. Between the no trade clause and the incredibly large contract, difficult fellow to trade. And the return, if you are Washington, certainly wasn't dramatic. It is Landry Shamet. It is a bunch of second rounders and some pick swaps, and the big
pick swaps that will be absolutely meaningless because unless things go really bad for Phoenix,
we don't need to get, this is not a rabbit hole, but the pick swaps actually are far enough away that they could be.
I think they're 24 and 26.
I think there are two. I think there were a couple. I thought they were later, but I thought there were more later. Basically, anything that the Suns had in terms of draft capital that they could add, they did. Except I believe this year's second rounder. But anyway, a couple things that we want to get into. Obviously, there is the reaction to what this does for the Suns, because what this means for the Suns is obviously relevant for the Lakers in the Western Conference. That's a big thing. The really large element of this, though, for the Lakers is Chris Paul and his salary, which is now expected to be guaranteed for $30 million this year, is on its way somewhere else. It is currently part of the deal to go back to Washington. Everyone is working to find a third team so that he doesn't have to play for the Wizards, basically. So Chris Paul is not going to stay in Washington, but how he leaves Washington, Andy, is directly relevant to the Lakers and this whole question about whether or not he joins the team in the point guard situation, whatever. So we'll get to that next, but I wanted to ask you first, just, this is a fascinating trade because it is a trade that feels to me like something that would have happened 3 or 4 years ago, where everybody just goes, all right, that's a wrap. It's over. Give it to the Suns. But anybody who watched NBA basketball last season was like, what are we doing here? So what was your reaction to the deal itself? Because obviously what improves Phoenix impacts the Lakers, impacts the Western Conference.
Well, I mean, it is definitely a trade that, like you said, 3 or 4 years ago felt like it was inspired by Photoshop jobs and memes where Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin
General
Booker,
manager Grant Goldberg,
right? Exactly. With the underneath it reads championship season SZN. It's an interesting trade in the sense that, look, offensively, like, this feels like the ultimate, we are setting you up to succeed in certain respects and to prove your reputation, Frank Vogel. Because on one hand, we are giving you Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal. 95% of the offense ought to be just covered by the presence of all three of them. We need to find maybe one other guy that can either score or shoot, and a bench that doesn't hemorrhage points when they're out there. It's covered, Frank. Now, you need to figure out
90 points a game between 3 players.
Right. You need to figure out how to get the 3 of them, maybe DeAndre Ayton, and now the exceptionally valuable to re-sign Torrey Craig, to defend, because on paper, this group will be giving up damn near every point that they score.
Well, it's like, it's not that, like, Durant has been an excellent defender at points over the course of his career. It's not that he's never been able to defend or can't defend, but he's going to be 35 next year, I believe, injured all the time, and you don't want to be relying on him for that. Devin Booker, choppy history defensively. Bradley Beal is, some people, think he's good. Some he's okay. Some people not. I mean, but he's
Those
also
are the
never.
people who haven't watched him, Brian. He's not good defensively.
Not great, but also too is, like, it's, he's playing in Washington. Like, we'll see, like, what happens in higher leverage games, but it's not a lot of there in terms of what Vogel is being asked to work with. They might be able to bring a guy like Josh Okogie back. Like, they got to bring back everybody. They have no access.
Oh, Jock Landale now is incredibly important.
Incredibly important.
It's not Biyombo.
Pay me, Matt Ishbia.
No, seriously, they really are now. I don't care if you find those guys unimpressive or not. They are better than most likely the options at the veterans minimum. Like, those guys are the equivalent of full non-taxpayer mid-level acquisitions, bringing those guys back. I'm serious.
It's a remarkable deal, and I feel like in a lot of ways the Lakers and Russell Westbrook kind of killed this model, and then kind of what went on in Brooklyn.
I was going to say, I think it's more Brooklyn than the Lakers, because most people were skeptical when the Lakers brought in Westbrook. I was among the few skeptical when the Brooklyn super team formed. Like, I was in the minority. Most people thought that would work well.
The lesson of this this season, in a lot of ways, we can make this point, and we'll move on to Chris Paul next, is that depth matters. The team around you matters. The ability to get through the regular season, so you're not scrambling late for a better seed or whatever. All of this stuff matters. And the trade that the Suns just made, as we lean into an era of single aprons, second aprons, punitive tax penalties, loss of draft picks, less maneuverability in your trades, no ability to use your exceptions, all these other things, it's remarkable what they did here. And it is an incredible dice roll that I mean, I'm not going to say it's not going to work because that is a tremendous amount of firepower. But the way the NBA operates now, where the scouting is so good and the coaching is so good and the game plans are so good, I still think, I got to see it that they can be consistently good to beat teams like Denver, maybe the Lakers, all these other ones four times in 7 games, because they'll have 2 or 3 games where the offense is just so overwhelming it doesn't matter. But I need to see the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Matt Ishbia, the new owner of the Suns, in his brief time owning this team, he has basically become the equivalent of, how in Texas they have those different steakhouses where they've got a 72-ounce porterhouse, and if you can eat the thing in an hour, you get it for free. But like 99% of the population can't eat the thing in an hour, and you end up paying like $200 for the steak. Matt Ishbia is the owner equivalent of the guy who goes into the restaurant. That's his order every single time he goes in.
Every place. Every place
and he orders sides with it.
Sure, like, this is the Wendy's.
Yes.
All of it.
He orders the 72-ounce steak every single, and he wants to make sure the whole restaurant's watching him attempt to eat this steak.
I mean, he's not shy. I'll give him that. What does this mean for Chris Paul to the Lakers? That's next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's easy to get caught up in what everyone needs from you and never taking a moment to think about what you need from yourself. It's hard to balance just being there for your significant other, for your children, your extended family, work. But then again, you got to remember to be there for yourself. And when you feel like you're spending all your time giving, it can make you feel stretched thin, burnt out, and life doesn't come with a user manual. And when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. Navigating life's challenges, it's difficult, and there's no such thing as a user manual. And I can personally speak to how much therapy has helped me during a really difficult period in my life for me and my family, and sitting down, talking with a professional was huge. And BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, accessible anywhere, 100% online, no waiting rooms, no traffic. Plus, it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist, and if things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. So if you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can help you get there. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn.
Okay, so when Paul going to Washington, he is not expected to stay there. But the big thing that this trade does is, at least for the time being, looks like it guarantees the $30 million that is owed to him for this year, as opposed to him being bought out for 15, whatever it might be, or the Suns not releasing him, which was a rumor for last week. So that, Andy, has a massive impact on where the Lakers could slot him in.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes. First of all, I could be wrong, but I don't think the Wizards necessarily have a reason to trade him quickly. Other than maybe like the PR of wanting to do right by, respected future Hall of Fame player with a lot of juice, especially if he makes it public, he wants to know what's going on with him quickly. He wants to have his offseason figured out, all that stuff. But if, say, the market for Chris Paul is not over the next week what they want it to be, I don't think they really have an issue opening camp with him still on the roster. Like, if he wants to play, great. If he wants to play, I think you let him play. You absolutely, you absolutely let him play. If he wants to be away from the team because he doesn't feel like he's a part of the direction, which, to make perfectly clear,
he is not.
Right. Then, okay, you can let him be away from the team while you look for some type of deal. But if you're flipping him one way or another, you are going to be paying the equivalent of his salary one way or another, like in terms of what you're paying Chris Paul or who you are
paying and we bring it back.
Exactly.
The odds are. I mean, especially with any team that it's not like there's a team that wants Chris Paul that can absorb him into cap space or something where you get a trade exception. Like it's the Clippers, it's the Lakers, it's teams like that. And you know,
so that's one. I'm just saying that's one thing that I think is interesting about this is, and I may be misreading it, but I don't think there's an absolute hurry to figure this out in a week.
There isn't, and that obviously makes a difference for the Lakers. I mean, CP, I'm sure, would love this to be settled as fast as possible because you don't want to be sitting around watching. But from the one thing about it, I'll say is you know, to your point about needing to do it quickly, the Wizards, this trade is from we've talked about a ton from Phoenix's standpoint, from Washington's standpoint, it is about getting Bradley Beal's contract off of their books so that they can properly rebuild. They didn't get draft picks out of it. They didn't because the
not good draft picks.
Yeah, they didn't get first rounders. They didn't get and so the point of this was to make it possible for them to start to reconstruct the roster, and that's relevant for like Kyle Kuzma, which we'll get to in a second. But they don't need a big return. It's not like they're looking at this going, geez, Chris Paul and how we flip CP is the key to making this trade work. Like it is an awful trade in terms of return, human capital, draft capital, all that kind of stuff. It's not, and what they get for CP is not going to turn around. All they need to do is avoid somehow adding pieces that get in the way of their ability to rebuild and have as much space to absorb other teams' bad contracts, try to get draft picks that way and whatever. So the timing aspect of it is important because if they do hold on to him, that means the Lakers can't wait around for him to be bought out, which he eventually would be. If Washington doesn't trade him right away to the Clippers or something like that, or it's not going to be the Lakers. The Lakers are not going to acquire Chris Paul who's making $30 million. So the only way he gets to LA.
One hopes not.
That's true. Early reports seem to, from the insiders seem to indicate the Lakers aren't interested in it, but you're right. We don't know. We are assuming the Lakers are not going to trade for Chris Paul making $30 million a year. They would be much more interested in him as a free agent with an exception or the veterans minimum. That can't happen if he's traded to the Clippers or whatever. It can only happen if Washington buys him out eventually or another team buys him out. The Lakers don't have until September to figure out what to do with D'Angelo Russell or Dennis Schroeder or any of these other things. So if you were in the camp of bring back those two guys, this trade accelerates that. It raises the likelihood significantly of the Lakers turning back to D'Angelo Russell and back to Dennis Schroeder, because those are the guys they have access to, and those are guys they can get.
Yeah, I feel like if the Wizards are looking to make a trade involving Chris Paul, that really decreases the likelihood of him becoming a Laker, especially because with the Clippers, by all accounts, being interested in getting Chris Paul, they have the motivation to trade for him outright, just for no other reason than to avoid him eventually ending up with the Lakers or with a different team that they're going to be competing with. But also, too, the Clippers will have a much easier time making a trade for Chris Paul because they have a bunch of expiring contracts that they can throw together. Like Eric Gordon makes, for example, I believe $21 million this upcoming season, none guaranteed by the end of June, but in theory, they could, if they made this trade pretty early, they could bring him in and then waive him. From there, you have
they still owe him the money though. Once you trade a guy, his contract's guaranteed.
Oh, right. Yes, you're correct. You are correct. They would actually have to, but Marcus Morris makes 17 expiring after this season. Nick Batum makes a little under 12 expiring after this coming season. Covington, same deal. Terrence Mann, they might be interested in as a young player. I think the Clippers would work hard to avoid including him, but maybe Bones Highland could be an option for them as a young player. Brandon Boston, Amir Coffey. They could throw in a future first. I don't think they have one that they can trade till 2027. But the point
Washington
being,
will take it. They just want stuff.
Right. The point being, though, the Clippers will have an ability to actually line up salaries for Chris Paul and actually make this deal happen. And if it's something that they really want at this point, given how pot committed they are to the Kawhi Leonard, Paul George era, how deep into spending they already are, and the need that has been pretty evident for a point guard, I feel like there's going to be an urgency there for the Clippers that the Lakers both can't compete with and frankly shouldn't.
Right. The biggest issue is shouldn't, because Mo Bamba and Malik Beasley would do the trick from a financial standpoint. Like the Lakers could piece those contracts together. It's not impossible for them to do it. It's just that they don't have any interest in giving Chris Paul $30 million because of the ripple effects that has through the rest of the roster and their ability to pay Hachimura and pay, bring back Schroeder and maybe bring back Lonnie Walker and bring all these other things that they want to be able to try to do without busting through that second apron, which has restrictions on what they can do and hurts their flexibility going forward. So it's not the Lakers can't put together a deal. It's that they won't if once Paul's contract is guaranteed. So a little bit more on that. And then also too, it's not just Chris Paul. When you think of players that could potentially be impacted by this move from Washington, the ball is really in the Wizards' court in terms of prominent free agents, including Kyle Kuzma, who has been, even before the deal, there was some chatter that he might be potentially somebody the Lakers could look into. We'll get into that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Ibotta. And let's say you're buying groceries, doing a little bit of summer shopping for the kids, maybe even getting yourself a little something nice. You've earned it. You're already spending the money. So why not get cash back for your troubles with Ibotta? For example, typical basket of groceries was over $50 more expensive at the end of 2022 than at the beginning of the year due to inflation. I'm sure people are feeling this. Everyone shops for food all the time. You can earn 2.5 times that in cash back from Ibotta. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get cash back. It's really easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 a year in real cash back. Again, real cash back, not points that, let's be honest, nobody ever uses. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED when you register. Go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, use that code LOCKED, LOCKED. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or the App Store, and use that code LOCKED.
Okay, so we talked about CP3 and the fallout there and what happens with that. The other guy, though, that is impacted by this in the sense of trying to figure out what it is that the Lakers might be doing, or I'm sorry, the Wizards might be doing, is Kyle Kuzma. Player option for, I think it's like 13 or 14 million. He's not going to opt into that.
He's already said that he's
right.
opting out.
So the question becomes how much he's worth in the open market. It had been thought that the Wizards would automatically just re-sign him, bring him back and whatever. Now
they traded out Rui Hachimura with that assumption.
Right. Now, however, there is some bit of an open question. Like, do they want, if they're going to do this, do you want to have to commit $22 million? I'm just making up a number to Kyle Kuzma for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Now, the Wizards are going to need players. And he's 27 years old. He's a good complementary guy that you can build other people around. He's whatever. But it's not guaranteed necessarily that they're going to bring him back, Kristaps Porzingis, all these other things. And it is, if they dump him, the idea that the Lakers, and sign in, without getting into the arcane details of sign-in trades now with the new CBA, which are arcane, it is possible for the Lakers to construct a sign and trade, throw in a draft pick or something like that, that would work actually for Kyle Kuzma at 22, 23 million, whatever it might be. That would, in theory, be your replacement for Rui Hachimura. And as a thought exercise, because I doubt you'd sign and trade Kuzma and bring back Hachimura. As a thought exercise, it becomes really interesting to me. Like, who would you rather have? Hachimura at 17, 16, 17, 15, 16, 17, whatever it is, or Kyle Kuzma at 20, 21, 22?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because Kuzma, I think, is a better player than Rui Hachimura.
I agree.
He's a better overall player. I think he's a better rounded player. There was a lot of promise that I think Rui, exhibited during his time with the Lakers. There's a lot that, feels like if he spends more time with LeBron, more time with Phil Handy, who, by the way, will be with the Lakers longer. He signed an extension, which is great news, I think, both for the organization, but it's also a relief given how many coaches Frank Vogel has been poaching from the Laker organization. Like he's been taking G League guys, he's been taking regular coaches, he's taken everyone. And you know what?
Yeah.
You know what? Good for him, because he got kind of screwed over by the Lakers. But anyway, it starts becoming an interesting question, though. How much better do you think Kuzma is than Rui? Because there is a certain degree of redundancy with LeBron, AD, and Kuzma. We saw that during their time together. They managed to make it work, obviously, to the tune of a championship. But it does take some massaging. It takes a lot of confidence that Kyle Kuzma can play the majority of his minutes as a small forward. Because if you're thinking of him as more of a 4, then it really starts becoming a potentially expensive positional logjam between LeBron and Kuz, and depending on if you're ever looking to play AD as a 4, AD, and you just start wondering, is that the best way to allocate our resources and money and,
because whereas Hachimura, for example, I think is fully expecting probably to be a 6th man or something next year. Kuzma,
I don't know about that, but
would be more amenable to that at the very least than Kuz would. I don't think Kuzma would want to come here if he didn't think he could start.
I agree with that. I think Rui could very well be penciled in as a starter. He's certainly going to be paid. Yeah, he's going to be paid, if nothing else, like a damn expensive 6th man. If
well,
that's
I mean, a lot of 6 men are in that $15 to $20 million range. I mean, or 12 to 18 or whatever it is.
On the high side, he'll definitely be on the high side of what you pay.
Sure. But I just say, you can construct lineup.
Russell Westbrook was not the norm, Brian. Just in case last year
he's a bargain compared to their last 6 man.
His last season warped your perspective. Like, that's not
Don't
how
all
it
6
normally
men
works.
make $40 million.
No,
that's what they all did.
As it turns out, that's more exception than rule.
Why they have an award for this, and it's obviously very important,
right?
But I mean, the point being is, like, you can construct a lot of lineups where, essentially Austin Reeves is your small forward, Anthony Davis plays the 5, LeBron is the 4. I'm not saying that I would do it that way. I'm just saying it's not hard to do.
No, but you said a lot.
Well, it's one. It's one.
I don't want a lot of that. I don't want a lot of that.
It is a starting lineup that is not hard to conceive of, where Reeves is your 3, LeBron is your 4, and AD is your 5, and then Hachimura would come off the bench as the first big. That presumably, if Kuz is on your team, he's your starting 3. Yeah. And, I guess, Reeves plays the 2, and presumably D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Kuz had it was a challenge for Kuzma. I think the biggest issue for Kuzma coming back, I think, is honestly just role. Because he's a better player than Hachimura. And, Kuz is still a very inconsistent 3-point shooter. Well, guess what? So is Hachimura. I mean, he was money in the playoffs. So far beyond.
He's freaking Steph Curry in the playoffs.
That is, he was shooting at a level in the playoffs that is not anything anybody could possibly expect to happen over the course of a regular season. Kuzma is a more consistent player overall. He's a more consistent scorer. He's much better passer.
Yes.
He's Kuz, good rebounder. He's just a good player. Probably a more versatile defender. I think you can use Kuzma in more ways defensively than you can Hachimura.
Probably true. Yeah.
But he, especially with the ascendance of Reeves as a guy who can also put in 15 to 20 a night, it's a choice to come and step back and do it, especially in the postseason. The regular season, Reeves, Kuzma, whoever, Russell, anyway, they're all going to have plenty of games because of Anthony Davis and LeBron James sitting, some with injury, some for rest, to go out and put up points. Like they'll have regular season games to do it, but in the postseason, it's going to be much more restrained and constricted. That he would have to be willing to take that on in the interest of playing for a really good team, which is probably the trade-off there, because free agent market's weird and there aren't a lot of teams that can give Kuzma the money he wants and help him win.
I was going to say it's likely one or the other. Like, let's say he was willing to bide his time with a team like San Antonio that is not going to be likely a playoff team this season with Wembanyama, but they could end up a force in a couple years. Is Kuzma willing to, because I bring them up because the Spurs have cap space.
Sure.
He'd
be a really interesting fit there as a veteran leader, as a guy,
he's actually somebody I think
really
Pop would love Kuzma.
Yeah, I agree.
For all of Kuzma's, fashion and, 15-foot sweaters and hair and whatever, he's very coachable. That's always the impression that I've gotten, is that he's pretty easy to work with along those lines. So I actually think Pop would like him a lot. I think he'd actually like working with Pop. So like, is a team like that where it feels like he is on a legitimately competitive team at the end of his 20s or the beginning of his 30s, is that enough for him, or does he want to win right away? If he wants to win right away, you are correct. The teams that can put him in that position but also pay him beyond sign and trade possibilities that you and I don't know off the top of our heads, it ain't going to be a lot of options.
No. And it gets in, we'll quit here. And then tomorrow is Mike Garcia, Canyon Driver.
Yeah.
You follow on Twitter. Our kind of final draft preview. The draft is on Thursday. This show is obviously, that show will be for Wednesday. And so we'll do that. And then after the draft is over, we'll bring back some of these dudes and other people to tell you who they drafted and whether or not they're good. So a lot of that kind of stuff coming up, but the themes and issues from this trade and the fallout, whatever word you want to use, are enormous. They're enormous across the league. They impact the Lakers. They're huge in the free agent market, which was already shaping up to be beneficial to the Lakers because it was going to squeeze guys like Russell, who are valuable to Lakers, but maybe they don't want to pay him quite, the premium. So more on this to come over the course of the week. Wednesday, Mike Garcia to preview the NBA draft on Thursday. So it's going to be a really fun week, a really big week on Locked On Lakers. We appreciate everybody following along. We'll see you tomorrow.